Alright, YouTube, we have some shit to talk about, and I do mean shit. So when it comes to FF7, localization has always been a problem since the original FF7 and all the way up till now. I don't know about all the games in the compilation and things like that, but original FF7, Remake, Rebirth, localization has been an issue, and it seems like to a certain degree, it's maybe intentional. What we have here is somebody by the name of Matt Furda, who is on the English translation team when it comes to FF7 Rebirth. I assume also Remake, maybe the entire trilogy, I don't know, but he's definitely in the credits for FF7 Rebirth. What has been kind of making the rounds the last couple of days is screenshots of some of their tweets of them just outright confirming that they just did translations to like their discretion, kind of just whatever they wanted to, or just outright mistranslating things in the game. And also just kind of like outlandish tweets in general in terms of like what they would personally like to see happen when it comes to FF7. So I guess we'll just kind of start there. This is a screenshot going back to February 28th, 2020. So this is before Remake itself even comes out. This is them replying to somebody. And they say, I want Aerith to live and Cloud to die so she can become the protagonist. So that by itself shows that this person's a clear Aerith fan, which is fine, whatever. And it's a pretty crazy thing to say, but it's not like the biggest deal. I think some people are just a little bit blown out of proportion. I'm more interested in the mistranslation shit than what his like personal wants are for the story, I guess. And I could say something similar, like I wish Cloud would die and then maybe Zack lived and became the main protagonist. Like it's not the biggest deal. That's my favorite character. I'm a fan of Zack, right? It's whatever. But then there's this shit, Aerith, which is the Aerith Tifa ship, if you didn't know that. Lesbianic adventure is all I've ever wanted. Cloud and Sephiroth can have a threesome with Zack in the Afterlife DLC. Kind of a weird thing for somebody to say that is an employee of Square Enix, is translating the games for them, right? Even if that's like what the guy thinks or feels or whatever the fuck, like to say that publicly is very weird. Myself and plenty of other people out there have made, crude jokes and comments in the past in regards to characters and sexual shit and whatever, right? I mean, I've definitely never gone as far as to talk about, certain characters having a fucking threesome in the live stream and shit. That's kind of weird. But at the same time, I'm just a regular ass person. I'm not representing the company of Square Enix, right? There's a difference. And as for the person that he was replying to, I did actually pull up their Twitter account, and they actually haven't been active in almost 4 years at this point. But you can actually search up both of their handles, Preden, if that's how you say that shit, and Ferd Matt, and they actually have an exchange of tweets that go back as far as 2018. The thing is, though, with those tweets right there, we can't actually see what Matt's replies are, because for one, his account on Twitter is private, so you need to be following him to see what he tweets out. But also, since I got around to making this video, he has since deleted his Twitter. Or at least, like, deactivated his account or some shit. I've seen some people speculate that maybe he's going through and, like, deleting tweets and things like that, potentially, which could be the case, I guess. I don't know. But he does, however, have an Instagram account that is also private, but it does link to his Threads account, which is not private. But there's nothing really on there, hasn't really posted in a long time, other than this kind of ironic post, given what we're talking about. So anyways, let's move on to some other shit. This is part of their reply to a tweet. So the person says, it's just the shipper's bestie, the work was great, the dialogue was fun, I smiled a lot, I'll fight the brainworms. To which he replies, when I had Barret and Aerith say light it up / like dynamite during their synergy attack, I definitely thought of you. So yeah, this is just about dialogue that's said during a synergy attack. Not the biggest deal, right? But he does say that he chose what Aerith and Barret say during that attack, but also that whenever he did that, he was thinking of this person, whoever this person is, a friend of theirs, whatever the fuck, which is a little bit weird. Not the biggest deal, but just kind of weird. But then he follows it up with, I saw someone complaining that first love in Japanese was rendered as boys, like she's talking about Zack, who is a boy, like we need to reopen the schools ASAP. Now, he's referring to is this scene right here, which I've seen people trash a lot since Rebirth came out, where Aerith says boys, and then Tifa says meeting adjourned for now. Whereas in Japanese, Aerith says first love instead of boys, and then Tifa says something along the lines of tell me about your first love some other time, instead of meeting adjourned for now. Also, this is correctly translated in German. Also, apparently Spanish and Chinese have it correct, it's just English where they changed it. So that's where I start to get a little upset with this shit, because like the stuff we talked about so far has been like kind of weird at times, whatever, but not necessarily harmful. It's just kind of weird shit that he said on social media. But this is him outright confirming that he knows what is said in Japanese in the script and choosing to do something different. Outright confirms with that tweet that he knows that she says first love in Japanese, so why change it? He tries to pass it off as, well, she says boys, and boys is in reference to Zack. It's like, no, clearly you're not being as direct as it is in Japanese. It also just in general doesn't make a lot of sense because in Remake she does mention having a first love. Like that wasn't changed to some vague statement or whatever the fuck. So why is it different in Rebirth?
Nothing. Just that you were the same rank.
Huh? As who?
The first guy I ever loved.
There's potentially a couple things this could be. Either it's just pure fucking laziness. Like you're just not accurately translating it because you don't want to, I guess, which is just strange. Or it could also be some level of bias, potentially drifted into this shipping discussion. As already established in that is an Aerith fan and wanting Cloud to die, her to be the protagonist, the Tifa, Aerith lesbianic adventure, as he calls it, and then also the dialogue with like Aerith and Barret with their synergy attack. But at the same time, there is potentially a bias against Zack on his end. I previously had shown that you can search up like 2 usernames on X and see their exchange of tweets, right? And you can do the same here with this person that they refer to as their bestie. And we can do the same here, and they have tweets going back years and years and years, but also as recent as this month. But I came across this exchange of tweets where this person says, "I finally know who JK reminds me of. He gives Zack fair energy, goodbye," to which Matt replies something. We can't see what it is because his account is gone, but also on private. And they reply with, "You dislike Zack," with a bunch of exclamation points and question marks. This is just one exchange of tweets. We don't even have the context. We don't even have what Matt says in reply. It might not even speak to the whole picture, but it would seem like, based on their reaction, that he has some sort of dislike for the character of Zack. And if we circle back to the first love boys thing that we previously talked about, that might be why you see stuff like that, where they kind of go out of their way to not reference the character of Zack in some ways. If he has some sort of pull over that, some sort of say in what's said in English, why you don't see them like reference Zack as often as they do in Japanese. First thing that comes to mind for me when I say that is the teaser trailer we got for Rebirth back in 2022, where they outright say Zack's name in Japanese, but in the English trailer they just don't.
5年前、俺たちは一緒にここに来たのか。ザックス、どこにいるんだ？
You were here with me 5 years ago. Where are you?
I have no idea if he has any control over trailers or not. Zero idea there, but it's just kind of the first thing I thought of. But again, on the English side of stuff, there's at times it's kind of like a erasure of the character of Zack. Like trying to gloss over the relationship that Zack and Aerith have had in the past. Here's another thing I came across on Twitter, where in Crisis Core, Aerith says, "I'd like to spend more time with you," to Zack, and then she says the same thing to Cloud in Remake in Japanese, but in English they make her say, "Because I'm not sick of you yet." Those 2 lines aren't super different, but the point of what she says in Japanese is, for one, to reference Crisis Core, of course, but to mirror the relationship that she had with Zack with Cloud, right? Because she sees a lot of Zack through the character of Cloud. Another one here we have in English in Remake, Rude refers to Cloud as boy toy to Aerith, which is not what he says in Japanese. And in Japanese, they say, "Aerith, so is this your new friend?" And Aerith says, "Saying new may cause a misunderstanding." So this person further clarifies. So in this scene, I take it as Aerith doesn't like how Rude saying new friend while referring to Cloud, because it implies that Aerith used to have another friend, and it may give a bad impression to Cloud. Them using the phrase boy toy in English versus new friend in Japanese is just like weird. Trying to add like more, I don't know, like relationship type shit to Cloud and Aerith, even though they barely know each other at this point. And you can still interpret it that way in Japanese, right? Because she talks about it being misunderstanding. But still, like, boy toy versus new friend is very fucking different. Here's kind of another example of this. I just found out that Aerith never said, "I want to be with you now" in Japanese on their date. I'm just shocked. She literally says, "I see him in you, but I want to see you." And again, you can interpret the Japanese one as romantic as well, right? I want to see you, the real you, obviously. But to say, "I want to be with you now" is very different. If it makes any sense at all, it's like stronger of a statement, right? A more direct statement, which is often the case when it comes to English, where the English script is what adds a lot to like the love triangle debate stuff, right? And while I've always said Cloud, Tifa, Zack, Aerith, I've never denied the feelings that Cloud and Aerith have for each other, right? Because it's obviously there in the game and in the story, but there's a difference between like loving somebody and being in love with somebody. Even Aerith says this in the game, that there's different kinds of like, right?
At least I know now where you and I stand, I mean. Thing is, Cloud, I really like you. But then, like can mean a lot of different things, can't it? Because there's liking, and then there's liking.
So if you go through like the Japanese script versus like the English script, it's not always the case in Japanese that they're trying to push this like relationship thing with Cloud and Aerith. It's there sometimes, I'm sure, but it's more so like an English thing for some reason. Everything we talked about so far has been obviously kind of shitty, like a terrible localization, terrible translations, right? But it's actually not even the worst of it, and we're not even going to talk about all the different mistranslations and stuff that exist. There's actually a thread on Twitter that I've been referencing that I'll link in the description if you want to look up some more mistranslations and things. But what we're going to look at next is actually by far the fucking worst, at least that I've seen. We'll start by just playing this scene really quickly.
Listen, man. This is your chance to give your daughter a better life than what we have.
Now, at first, that scene might not seem like it has any problems. And this is something I didn't even notice, didn't catch in my playthroughs of Rebirth, and I didn't even know about it until it was pointed out here very, very recently. This scene is taking place 6 years in the past. Now, do you understand why that might be an issue? Barret is talking to Dyne about his daughter 2 goddamn years before she's even born. This flashback in Corel takes place 6 years earlier, so essentially 2001. The story takes place in 2007. And Marlene's not born until 2003. Is this maybe like the whispers, the plot ghost giving Barret future knowledge? He's seeing Marlene in the future or something. No, it's not. It's just an absolutely fucking terrible translation. In this moment in the Japanese script, Barret is talking about his wife Myrna, not Marlene, who is still 2 years away from being born. And throwing that text into Google Translate, and Myrna's kind of a weird name to translate, I imagine. I don't even know what her name is actually supposed to be in Japanese, but it says, I don't want Myrna to have to endure any more hardships. Look, I can't account for, every single mistranslation that's out there. I've probably not seen them all, right? Between Rebirth and Remake. But in terms of what I've personally seen, this is by far the absolute worst. It's fucking embarrassing. Again, admittedly, I didn't even catch this on my playthroughs, right? It's an easy thing to miss, but I think it's also an easy thing to catch if you're paying attention to, like, the time frames and shit. But nobody's thinking about that. I'm not thinking about Marlene's age and how far back in the past we're going with this flashback. I'm just trying to pay attention to Barret's story, right? Like, how does this happen? Like, if you were translating this from Japanese and he's talking about his wife in Japanese, how does that get spun into Dyne's fucking daughter that's not even born yet? How does this shit happen? Like, this is beyond, like, mistranslating shit, or, trying to push the Cloud Aerith narrative, or trying to ignore the history that Zack and Aerith have, or whatever the fuck we've talked about previously in this video. This is just fucking stupid. And look, with everything we talked about in this video, I don't know if Matt Furda's exclusively to blame, or if some other people are. And regardless, the entire fucking localization team is at fault here, because how do all of these mistakes happen, all these terrible translations, but specifically this last one? Like, it's got me fucking pissed off. Like, to think that I paid $70 for this game, and we're getting this shitty fucking translation from people that don't know what the fuck they're doing. How does this shit make it into the final game, right? Why is there not somebody checking their work whenever they do the translations? Who's not looking at that shit to make sure that it's accurate? But also, just in general, why can we not get an accurate translation? Why does every other language get an accurate translation of the Japanese script more or less than English? English is just, like, sometimes drastically different. And it's fucking frustrating, dude. Something in general needs to change here, right? With, like, the translating of the game from Japanese to English. And even put aside the Matt Furda stuff. Like, that's its own conversation, really. And we talked about that a bit in the video. Seems like kind of a weird guy. Whatever happens to him, happens to him. But in general, they need to get rid of, like, SENA and whoever else is doing this translating shit. Because they, again, do not know what they're doing. Like, how is Square Enix okay with this? To be honest, we shouldn't be okay with it as consumers, right? There's almost, like, a part of me that would like to not buy the third game. Because I know it's not going to be translated accurate. It's going to be terrible. We're going to be missing parts and story and lore and whatever, because we don't have what is actually said in Japanese. It's not going to happen because I got to play the third game, even if it's not totally going to be accurate to what's going on in the fucking story. But that's why we have great people in this community that do translations themselves on social media for free that are better at doing it than other people like Matt Furda and the people at SENA. I think that's kind of the conclusion to the video, my dudes. Again, there's probably tons and tons of other mistranslations out there. There might be more to the Matt Furda story. I have no idea. That's kind of what I wanted to talk about in this video. It's just kind of frustrating because I've been aware of the terrible localization forever, right? It's been existing since 1997, and probably in other Final Fantasy games too, I imagine. Probably all the time throughout the entire fucking franchise, for all I know. But seeing this stuff the last couple days, like the weird shit he was saying, and like him openly admitting to doing mistranslations, is like intentionally, I guess, just because he wanted to or whatever. And then seeing that fucking Marlene Myrna thing, I had to make a video. Something needs to change. Like, how are we still getting delivered like a half-assed product in terms of like the script all the time later? Almost 30 years later, after the original FF7, we're still getting fucked. Whatever, dude. Fuck it. That's the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. If I'm with her, dashingdavidbusiness. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.